Okay.
All right. Welcome to the first book study of 2024. We are paring back to less amount of books. I think we're doing about maybe 4 or 5 books in the year rather than 1 every month. Just so we have time to read the books and digest, and then if people feel like they're behind or whatnot, it doesn't feel like they have to miss that month because they didn't read it. Anyway, the book that we read for Lent, it's called Wild Hope, Stories for Lent from the Vanishing. It's by Gayle Boss and illustrated by David G. Klein. And so it's basically written for Lent. And so not each day of Lent, but there's about four days per week. And each day kind of has an animal to go along with it. So the first one is, there's a specific one for Ash Wednesday, you read that, and then the weeks you can kind of read interchangeably. But then during Holy Week, there's a specific animal for each one of Palm Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, and then Easter. And so it's sectioned off for different ones. So the first week, after Ash Wednesday is the hungry, and then the sick, the homeless, the poisoned, and the hunted. So as you can tell with the hungry, the sick, and the homeless, right, it is tying into what Jesus said, where I am the feed the hungry, feed the sick. That's where I am, and so it is an interesting book. I think that's a general overview of how it's laid out. I'll open it up to everyone about which sections spurred you, and then I think we can talk about week 1 through 5 together, and then towards the end, then we'll then kind of digest the Holy Week separately.
Well, with each animal, there was always a point that I got to where at some point I would say, oh.
Right.
Oh.
I guess the point are like, oh, it's gonna be hard, isn't it?
Yeah. So each section is only like maybe three pages. And the first half of this section is talking about how majestic and cool and just unique these animals are.
Right.
And then the last half is basically how they're becoming sick or how they're becoming hunted. I enjoyed that each one talks as if the each section talks as if each animal is the main character, and humans are a tertiary thing.
Say that again, sorry.
Sorry, like the animal is the main character,
Oh, yeah.
and humans are this tertiary, like, otherness,
Mhm.
right? It's a lot of times,
And-
even when we talk about helping the environment or hurting the environment, we're always the center of
Mhm.
things. And this book is interesting in that, like it says, and a person came by and said something. When it says that even when they're quoting a person, it's only in italics, like they don't even use quotes. It's very like decentering humans in the story,
Yeah.
because like they shouldn't matter. I mean, they are because they're hurting the things, but it is really taking us out of the equation.
Right, it's not, botanist, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
or biologist, that SMU said, it's just a man or a body, or it's like it's very, yeah.
Which I
In
thought
some
was
cases,
profound.
they're supportive though, rather than just, I mean, obviously humans caused,
Mhm.
pretty much each and every issue that this assortment of animals has, but
Right. either directly or
Right,
indirectly.
but at least some of the humans are, you know, trying to cheer them on or trying to bring back.
Right, and it's like you don't know sometimes, like you start reading and it says, a man enters in a canoe.
Mhm.
And you don't know what this man is this man friend or foe, is this
Right.
man, you know, even to the point of this man captures the animal. And you still know
Mhm.
until they, you know, put a tracker on them and release it into the wild and yeah. And, or they don't, I mean,
Mhm.
it's some
Right.
kind of,
I guess there are a couple, but most of the ones I read also, the hope coming from, you know, this not anymore, we're not gonna do this once we realize. The realization comes from a child,
yes, yes.
which I thought was also very poignant.
Uh-huh,
Like, it's
yeah,
the kid asking their dad or asking farmer, like, hey, I noticed this, or is this something that, you know, is gonna keep happening? And then you can tell that the parents' realization is things like not anymore,
right,
right? Like, I realized this, like,
yeah,
we can change.
yeah. And yeah, it's often through the child's eyes that we see the hope first.
Yeah.
I thought of this often, I thought about, you know, some of the kids in, you know, in my life that love animals. And she even started that, right? Didn't she start the introduction saying, you know, whenever she started talking to her own kids about Lent, their eyes would glaze over and it's like, nobody wants to talk about Lent, come on, mom. And then she would talk about Noah's Ark and it'd be like, oh, tell us more about the camels, tell us more about and that interest is what helped her to see, oh, maybe this is how we can structure Lent. I even was already thinking about, Christina uses animals sometimes in Advent. And I was thinking, giving
There's a
her,
lot.
yes,
There's
giving
a
her a
lot
copy of the
here
book
that-
before we talk about it. Because it can be and I don't know if it's the same kind of endangered animals or if it's a completely
Yeah.
different way of doing it.
Yeah, so as a foresight, she wrote a book for Advent, and so
Oh,
we'll do
right.
that in December.
Mhm.
I think it's the same one that she has animals that she has pigs.
Yeah.
I think that was her first book, that was.
Yes, I didn't realize that until the end when.
Right, when I was reading the.
And she wrote a copy that is focused on, for children and teens with that one, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
like there's that, and then there's a version for younger.
Yeah, I mean, cause I was even thinking, this is not inappropriate for, I mean, it gets kind of violent sometimes. But I think it's kind of,
It's an easy.
it's an easy read for kids, it's the kind of thing, depending on your kid and depending on the age, it could be something that you could, you know, read once a day as kind of a.
At least the first half.
Yeah, right, right. And again, a lot of it is hard to hear, but I think that's part of her point is that, if kids are starting to understand why these hard to hear stories are happening, then that's when they begin to become the hope or become the change or become.
And a lot of times we coddle them too much, think, oh, it's not for them, they're not ready for it. It's like, well, no, they're more ready than you think, and
Right,
by us kind of keeping them away, we're actually making it worse.
right,
Making it more stagnant.
right. I'm trying to remember one of the early ones where, you know, with the adult said, oh, we don't need to save those animals, we gotta save jobs, but then the kid comes home from school and saying, why are you killing these animals or something? And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing where our children can be pretty influential, I
and-
think.
I mean, that's one of the big ones, is the connection between. Like, some things are just ridiculous, like overfishing and some things that are like, we don't need to do this, like, this isn't helping us. But there are some that are in, you know, and especially in more remote areas, that it's like, it's not that we're over harvesting, it's just that we're just doing it slightly wrong and we don't know how else to do it, and it's
Right.
just competing for
Right.
the same resource.
Well, we're so disconnected, like, there's like, what was the one about the plastic in the stomachs of the
Oh, yeah, that one was falling hard.
Yeah,
It was the birds.
the birds, that's right, the plastic and,
Albatross.
yes, that's what it was. And it's like when we toss plastic in the trash, we're not thinking, there goes another albatross. But we're disconnected from, as opposed to, hey, I want tuna, give me some tuna, right? This is clearly, we're overfishing tuna. That's the connection we're making. I mean, I'm buying a part of a rhino tusk. I can see that's a bad plan, right? But we have a disconnect from how many
Well,
albatrosses. we
And
kill.
it's, and I see this at my parents' farm, because they have a
Mhm.
watershed pond, which,
Mhm.
everything from all the places come to that, and it's this, well, the only way farmers can make enough money is to put pesticides so that their
Right.
plants don't get eaten up. Well, that goes into the water now, so you can't eat any of the fish. because they're-
Right.
And they're small and it's just horrible.
Mhm.
But like, how do you fix that? Right? Like, this is a system where you need to fight, basically big farm
Yeah,
so that
right,
local farmers can compete without having to damage their crops, right? And then I think now that there's some government programs to say, okay, we will pay you X amount that year to let the land go fallow.
right,
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 because it's like, I can't afford to not plant it, it's like, well, the government can pay basically how much that would typically bring cash to let it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I noticed that in a couple of the later ones, when, we're going to overpay the hunters who would hunt for these illegal, for the illegal trade of these animals, we're gonna pay those hunters, we're just gonna pay them to find them and tag them or, count them for us, and we're gonna basically pay them to not kill the animals, but protect them.
But that's a problem.
How?
Well, that's so much, it's difficult because there's somewhere it says like. That one helps, there's one where they're like, we'll pay them more to not do it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then they're like, okay,
Right.
great, pay me not to do it, and then they
Yeah.
secretly do it, and then they
And
get
then
paid
get
twice.
paid twice, right?
Right, you have to
right.
make sure that
It's a
you
problem.
make it so that, again, there's an incentive, like, okay, you have to put a tracker on them.
Uh-huh.
We have to make sure that they do actually do that. and
Right,
they don't
right,
just
right, yeah.
Pocket the money you give them to put a tracker in, and then,
And they go ahead and
and
kill
then,
it and.
Yeah.
or they put the tracker in, and then they sell it to someone else to say, hey, I put a tracker in this one, you gotta go find it, it's like,
They double,
and then they get-
right,
of course, the animal gets killed by someone else, but there's no connection, it's like, oh, I didn't kill him, I just put the tracker in.
right.
So the hard part is.
Yeah, no, it
Humans
is. It
are
is a
very
lot of
sneaky
systemic
and-
stuff, yeah.
But yeah. That was about. Rhino horns. Is
Oh, right.
Was that it?
Oh.
That's later, that's in the,
That's the, yeah, week 5.
or is it week 5?
Week 5 is the black rhinoceros.
Yeah,
Rasta.
they just killed, well, that one's, there was 2 of them. One of them was the elephant, which they killed, and cut the tusk
Yeah,
off,
yeah,
which is horrible.
Yeah.
But the rhino one is worse because it was like, they don't even kill it, they just tranquilize it, cut it off, and then all of a sudden it wakes up and then
yeah, and then somebody else who cares about the animal has to kill it.
has to kill it and then put it out of its misery. It's just horrible. It's horrible. But yeah, there's kind of different ones. There's those ones that are these, as Matt said, blatantly obvious, people are over hunting and over fishing.
Mhm.
But then there's the some that's like, no, like the, especially in the hungry and the lost, the homeless,
Mhm.
right, are ones where,
Mhm.
like the homeless ones, a lot of them have to do with birds, and because we've messed up the magnetic poles and the temperature
Yeah,
swings.
yeah, they're
they-
so far
they can't-
removed. from-
They can't actually find, where to go home, because they're holding things.
Right.
Or the hungry ones, or I can't remember which animal it was, but their, migration patterns corresponded with the migration patterns of shrimp or their eating habits. And so, because they get back when they need to eat, replenish themselves to come back, the other migration isn't there for them to.
Right,
be-
right, right, not there at the right time.
Which animal was that?
Was that the red knot?
I think so.
They're talking about the
Oh,
crabs.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Cause they fly so far, these are the ones that fly like from
From South America.
South America, yeah, like
Yeah.
Argentina to Canada or something.
Yeah.
Tierra del Fuego,
Uh-huh.
southern tip of Argentina, yeah.
Up into
I
the
had to
Arctic
look that up.
Yeah.
And I actually. Yeah, flying 9,500 miles from the Canadian Arctic,
That's it.
and then they end up southern tip of Argentina. Wow. Well, yeah, and so their intermediate stops, like on the beaches of Delaware Bay, they stop there just as the horseshoe crabs are rowing back out to sea.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
says,
yeah,
and boy, if any of those cogs are the least bit off,
right,
which, they are,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
most of it.
and what's the other one? Oh, the monarch with the Roundup, right? I mean, this is something that
Oh.
we've all
right.
used, to kill
Yes.
weeds, and these are things that,
It kills the milkweed.
and
that
kills
they
the milkweed they
Uh-huh.
eat, that's right. Again, that's another kind of,
Right.
it feels like we're not,
That was a Midwestern thing, right? That was a Midwestern story.
oh,
if
yeah,
I
yeah,
recall.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's. Oh, and the bat, the Indiana bat, that one I had a lot of connection to with we did a lot of caves in we were growing up, Indiana caves and Thickey's Mammoth Cave just down the road and all
Oh, yeah, the
Well,
butterflies.
yeah, there's a bunch of caves up in Northern California, Oregon that we went to up in near Crater Lake
yeah,
and Idaho. There's a bunch of
oh. okay.
caves and
Huh.
stuff, yeah. Yeah, like, I think, I can't remember if they talk about, and you, like, once you're in a cave, I think you have to, there's foot wash things, and
Mhm.
like, you can't go to another cave for a day or
Right,
two or
right.
something,
Yeah.
like, they track all that.
I remember they started doing that just later as before we were leaving
Mhm.
leaving Kentucky, they started doing that.
Yeah, we went, to the lava tubes near Bend. where
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
they did
yeah,
that
Yeah.
As well, the rangers,
Yeah.
they stop and give you that
yeah,
whole
yeah.
lecture.
Oh, yeah, 53 is where monarchs begin.
Yeah, the females smell the landscape. Within 3 days, they've flown as far as Texas.
Hmm.
Their legs and antennae can smell a single inch tall milkweed sunk in a sea of vegetation. Makes it amazing that one found our pollinator.
That's right,
down
that's
here.
right.
Yeah.
We must have, had the right thing at the right time.
Orange Kansas skins. Yeah, but you're right, Matthew, it's well, what's the word you used, amazing, I mean, some of the amazing facts are
Right.
just so. It's incredible to hear just how intricate, and how. Unbelievable it is that the balance of these animals to survive, right? So you can see where 2 or 3 tips here and there. The whole thing falls apart.
They are so interconnected.
Mhm.
They're so dependent on
Yeah, yeah.
those connections. Yeah, In 20 years, 99, I'm sorry, I'm still on the monarch thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
In 20 years, 99% of the milkweed here has disappeared.
Mm-hmm,
And in those 20 years, farmers have been spraying their fields with Roundup.
yeah, yeah.
and that's the one that ends with the kid going to his dad or the farmer saying, "Can we
Right,
not
yeah.
use Roundups or
Right,
Mhm.
right,
less?"
And asking, where can we plant this milkweed?
yeah, oh, yes, yes, that's it, the kid comes home with a milkweed, like the farmer's like, oh, well, this is what I have to use. All those green environmentalists are just, you know, and then his own kid comes home with a milkweed plant, he's like, can I plant it? Yes, that is it, that's the one I was thinking of.
That is a key right there.
Mhm.
Are we doing this in any order? Or we just kind of skip
No, I
this
think,
right now?
I think,
Okay.
I do kind of want to keep the Holy Week ones to
Till
the end.
Till the end. I was looking for the prairie dog one because, man, I really related to that.
Mhm, that's
Where
right,
I grew up, I don't know if it's still the case,
Or the
having read
ferret,
this book.
the ferret?
yeah, the
Yeah,
ferret was the
ferret
prairie
and
dog.
The prairie dog are interconnected, and I did not
Oh,
know
Well,
that.
yeah.
And that is, I remember a guy in Topeka talking how much about the prairie dog being a keystone species and how many other species they're connected to.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. I just knew my dad goes prairie dog hunting because they're so,
Yes, they're so prolific.
they're
Yeah,
invasive.
Yeah, right?
yeah. I don't think anybody in western Kansas understands that.
Yeah.
How many other species depend on them. All they know is that if they drive into a field, their truck or their tractor might
Right, right.
sink because of the burrows.
Or the, cattle, right?
Yeah.
The cattle
right,
will go
okay.
in and, you know,
Mhm,
put a leg through a burrow and break it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Right, and that's, you're losing your
Yeah,
livelihood.
right, yeah.
And, right, there was one of my high school classmates, at least 10, 15 years ago, he leads hunting tours.
Mhm,
Prairie
mhm,
dogs.
yeah, yeah. But all the efforts to protect prairie dogs in order to protect ferrets will work only if farmers and ranchers choose to see the dogs differently. The owners of this ranch have, when they describe how cattle operation works, conservationists listened and eased restrictions on what they could and could not do on the land. Which I think that's also important, right? The conservationists see that there's, you know, how do you protect a livelihood while protecting, because in the long run, you're trying to protect the livelihood
Mhm.
anyway. It's not just for the animals, it's for the entire ecosystem, right? And
Right.
so if you're finding ways to protect farmers in the long run, it should help everybody, if you're listening. Okay.
It's
Right,
also
yeah,
similar to
yeah.
the deer and coyotes, wolves,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I think, I mean, I say we as conservationists, park rangers, like track those numbers, and so they know to sell more or less deer hunting permits. And I think that's how it should be with the prairie dogs, right? It's not like, oh, we need to protect the prairie dogs, we can't hunt them at all.
Uh-huh.
It's, no, we just need to like put a handle on this, and
Right.
here's this other thing that we need to watch.
Like,
And make sure we
attention
don't-
to the balance.
That's right,
Don't-
yeah,
Don't overdo it.
right. Right, and you're right, same thing with
And I
wolves,
wonder-
right? Wolf
I-
hunting and
I
wolf.
wonder if there's a way you can put in like, if they can do like a subsonic or hypersonic sound thing
Uh-huh.
to keep prairie dogs out of certain areas.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, here's your, like, you put it on the road so it doesn't, you don't lose a tractor or something, or, okay, here's a certain fields you have that you can put that on.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, but that was the other one is, it does bring in a lot of those, like, that intersection of where does someone's livelihood meet
right,
the animal, and not in, I mean, there's some, as we said, that are dangerous and obvious that we're doing way
Right,
too much,
right.
to stop, but like, there's several of them here that are mentioned, like, I'm just trying to do my honest day's work.
Right,
And
right,
how does that work, right?
It's no family.
yeah.
So it's honest in that regard, and it's not just, humans are terrible, horrible people, and look
Yeah,
how horrible we are, we should stop doing everything
right,
we've been doing. It's
right,
it's
right.
very aware
Uh-huh,
of the interconnected, not just of all the other animals, but of us too, and
right,
we also have a role to play.
right, right. And that role is, I mean, I thought about that when early on, I remember one of the earliest kind of environmental issues that I remember connecting with was it may have been in Washington or Oregon, kind of the spotted owl, right? And this was shutting down forestry work. And there were folks saying these are, killing our jobs. And the argument that was attempted, at least, whether it was made or not, was attempted, was that, this is, as we care for this animal, we're protecting your job in the long run, right? Maybe not today, but in the long run, we have to be thinking about the health of the ecology, the health of the whole system. And if this is the canary in the coal mine, of the system falling apart, then you're not gonna you may have a job, but your kids won't, or your grandkids won't.
Right, and
Which
it's
I
hard
think,
to
yeah.
get people to see the long game.
Right.
And I
To see the long term.
Yeah, it's where a lot of our, kind of the progressive liberalism breaks down, as we say, here, we need to stop doing this, and we don't say, well, what do we do after that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, it's like the idea of, we need to shut down coal plants. It's like,
Mhm.
well, that's my job, and it's like, well, if we read saying, okay, we'll train you to build solar panels, or we'll train you
Right,
to do
right,
something else, like, we're not taking your job.
Right,
You'll still have a job, it won't be a coal mine anymore, getting blacklisted.
right, right.
Exactly, it's healthy for,
Yes,
healthier for
yeah.
them too.
We will still provide, you will still have a job, and it'll be better.
Yeah.
But it's hard to think that
Right,
far ahead,
right, right.
and it's hard to see that when this is all you know.
Right, it's right, it's scary, right? It was like, I don't know how to build solar panels, I know how to mine for coal, that's what I know, yeah. If you take that away from me, what do I know?
Right.
Or what
And
can I
we
do?
have sustained them for generations.
Right,
and, you know,
Sustained.
not being-
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Well, sustain their livelihood.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Not the planet.
right. And not even their livelihood, I mean,
Well, true.
if you think about the ways now, they're mining for coal that dump all these minerals. I mean, you look at the cancer rates that have gone up in the last 50 years in West Virginia. In these towns, and it's because these heavy metals are getting dumped into the water supply. And so maybe their livelihood, but not their lives, right? I mean, you're
And their
seeing,
health.
and their health,
Well,
and,
Yep.
and so it is a not only short term for the financial impact, but it's also super short term for the health impact.
Yeah,
But again, I think you're right, I think there are definitely, kind of liberal arguments that don't take any of that into consideration and just assume that somebody can just quit doing this job and they'll, it doesn't matter what you do afterwards, you just figure it out, right, as opposed to reintegrating, turning coal producers into energy producers of different kinds. Yeah.
Right,
Good.
like just assisting them in, finding a way to have a program to re-educate. or-
Right. Yeah, it was interesting how, I mean, you think about, oh, well, all these species live in Africa or South America. But to look through and see, bats in Indiana and ferrets in Wyoming, and some of these that are, I mean, still plenty across the world, but some of them are also pretty local.
yeah, well, and in different sizes too, right? I mean, we've got whales, and we've got,
Mm.
Oh, right,
fish, we've got mussels and
Uh-huh.
olms, which is a type of salamander.
Yes, yeah.
Favorite.
Uh-huh.
And butterfly, like
Yeah.
it's good that it's the whole range, right? And so, I mean, I think people are fascinated or drawn to like certain types of animals. And so I think it's nice that it's big range. It's not just like, okay, it's it's not just elephant and hippos and rhinos
Polar bears.
and polar bears
Yeah.
and zebras,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Well,
right.
great,
Yeah.
they're all,
Claws.
quadrupeds,
Yeah, right, exactly.
you know.
But yeah, it very much the mussel, the golden ripple shell mussel,
It was a beautiful chapter.
yeah.
Which was great, because again, growing up,
Yeah.
mussels I was familiar with, or zebra mussels,
Uh-huh,
which get everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, we are
They
the
are
opposite
invasive.
end of
Yes.
endangered.
Yeah,
That was one where like you couldn't take water or anything out from a pond. You couldn't even
Uh-huh.
take fish out, because it could have had,
right.
the whatever, what's the baby mussel called? I don't know. It's a speck of whatever.
I love her so.
Yeah, but it can get somewhere else, and then
Yeah.
you can't release fish into another lake, because.
Right, because zebra mussels,
They
yeah.
might
Zebra
be,
mussels.
right.
Oh, yeah, that's
They're
another one.
clogging pipes and.
Do they clean the water like these mussels? Because that was the big thing about these is they
Yeah,
clean the.
I think they do,
ecosystem
but the
for other
fact that like
animals.
zebra mussels, there were so many of them in one area that they just.
Well, I think the problem was they aren't native,
Right.
They're
so they're invasive, and they don't have predators, and so,
And yeah, no, there's like no other fish eat them.
right. And so instead of, maintaining a balance, it becomes
They
mussels
take
everywhere. Yeah,
everything.
Oh, yeah, cause that's another one. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just remembering, a few years ago, and this is, it might be animal related, but the grassland at Tallgrass Prairie,
Mm,
there were people who wanted to frack in that
oh,
area.
right.
And it's like, what are you
Yeah,
thinking?
right.
Why would you even think
Yeah.
that is okay?
Right. Yeah. Well, and when you see a world that's only through, I mean, again, that's the difference between this is impacting my livelihood versus my only lens is financial or commercial or, how much I can get from this place.
Right.
Then, well, of course, it's just a bunch of weeds out in the middle of nowhere. Why can't we frack there? That's good money,
Yeah.
that we're wasting.
This is something we can't exploit without guilt.
Right. Well, that's come up in Douglas County, right? There's been a pushback on some of the places where folks want to put solar panels on their own private land
Right.
or wind on their own private land because they say, well, that's good dirt there.
Mhm.
And so you can't waste that.
Right.
Even though it's their land, they say, no, you can't have a solar panel on your property there. And right, and so that's kind of the same kind of argument. It's like commercially, we understand that's our lens, right? That's what we value.
Right.
I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. I understand good dirt, I get that, but at the same point, the dirt's gonna be dried up and gone,
Right. It's not
if
going
global
to-
warming is, not checked one way or another.
It's not gonna be fertile anymore.
Right.
Well, and two, you were talking about the people who, like paying people to not do something,
Yeah,
paying them to not hunt, whatever. The same thing happens with farmers, honestly, because they are paid by the government
all right,
to stop farming,
that's right.
to plant it back to grass and.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and then they do, right? And then it's fraud, but I mean, the government doesn't have resources to check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's in the taper section that I'm looking right now where the researcher, the chapter ends with her imagining her team and a new media campaign and says,
Mhm.
you know, it's like researchers and people caring for these creatures
Yeah.
are turned from, you know, they can't just do the science anymore. They have to advocate for
That's right.
the animals.
That's
with
right.
Whatever means they can.
What was that other book we read? Don't Even Think About It. You remember that? Talking about climate change and kind of the way we talk about climate change and the way we engage communities around that, and social relationships around it, and why people are unlikely to believe that climate change is real and that it's all kind of psychological and sociological stuff, which is the same, that's what they're having to do, is it turns it into their public relations.
Right,
For
the animals.
For the animal,
Yeah.
That comment ties into evangelism.
Ah,
Don't
yeah,
even think about it, or don't
Yeah.
even talk about it,
Right.
right? Like, it's
yeah,
terms that came up of that are true have become so much baggage to them that we can't use that word anymore,
right,
right? I mean, okay, let's just not talk about climate change, let's just talk about what's the best that benefits the world.
Yeah,
Like what is just good ecological practice and stewardship and, you know, that helps you and is sustainable to, not, you know, sustainability also has it's above.
yeah, right,
Even
right,
Even though it's like,
From the
hey,
other direction.
let's just sustain,
yeah.
right?
That's
Let's just make it so that
Right.
everything can sustain and hold itself,
That's right,
together.
that sounds good, but then sustainability all of a sudden
But
has a bad.
sustainability all of a sudden
connotation.
has this,
Yeah.
has this bad connotation. So,
Yeah.
like, how do we remove all of that and just say, hey, it's just, here are some practices we can do that just makes the world a better place.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
Which is-
they understand.
I mean,
It seems like to me that it would be, you know, if you can tell a person something in a way that they can see the impact of them or their family or, you know, their children's children.
Right. Yeah, that's it. That's the other thing that book says, is some kind of practical ways to say, how can you make this a matter of self-preservation? Or self-interest. And if you can turn this into a self-interest argument, then you have a chance.
You
Yeah,
have a,
right.
right,
right.
a chance at winning at all, perhaps.
Right.
All right, well,
Mm.
you wanna jump into the last week? There's not, I mean, it's not much different, but starting to, I mean, it just gets darker. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
That chapter is titled The Desecrated.
it doesn't, right,
Right.
and so I think it starts with, the bonobos,
Yeah.
where like they find out that they're like killing them and eating them, and this guy
Oh, yeah.
steals the back, it ends somewhat well.
Right,
because they
yeah.
realize that someone's trying to poach this, bonobo by stealing the backpack, and this guy steals the
Like, steals
backpack
the
and runs
backpack,
off
runs
with it.
off, yeah.
But, man, like the idea that, you know, people just,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, so, let's see. So heartsore, the man gropes for something more to unload and notices the backpack has moved on its own. He grabs the pack and runs, tracking bonobos has made him strong and fast, but he can no longer hear curses behind him from the poachers,
Yeah,
realizing
yeah.
he stole the
I had to
backpack.
read that a couple times, like. Yeah.
He stops, staring at his own hands, he reaches into the pack, the orphan inside reaches back. Each one, yeah, it's.
And again, this feels more clear, it's like, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna go on the black market and buy bonobo meat, right?
Yeah.
And that feels like this is an easy one, but there's others that feel like, well, the next one, right? I mean, how many restaurants have we been to and,
You know, the
you
tuna.
know, bluefin tuna is on the menu.
Yeah, that one's hard because. I can't remember what. Well, but it's not just like we're catching fish and harvesting sustainably. It's like they caught this one and so they set it aside and they have like, and it's basically like they auction it off, like this prized
Mhm.
thing. And
Yeah.
it's just, this, they're
Yeah,
selling it for hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
yeah,
this one says
30,000, yeah,
30,000,
yeah.
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah, and this is an overfishing case, right, where they've just decimated the
Mhm.
population.
Yeah, and they say, the government sets limits and they double the limits they go over the quotas every time.
Right, yes. Whatever number they're allowed, some take more, all told perhaps double. the-
Yeah, right, and then they sell,
Yeah.
because they buy basically the credits from other people.
Mhm.
I think that's lobster and crab where. And I think there's a size limit both ways. Like,
Mm,
obviously you can't hunt them too small. But you can't get it, like if it's
Right.
too big, they let them go too, and that helps prevent people from, finding that big one and
Right,
selling it
right.
and that kind of
yeah,
over.
so if it kind of takes it, guts the market a little bit.
Yeah. Like, here's the prime now.
It was interesting about the bluefin that at one point, nobody wanted it.
Ah, right,
It was
yeah,
for pet food,
yeah,
the ones that were inadvertently caught, because they weren't trying to catch them.
yeah. 5 generations ago, no culture craved bluefin belly. In Japan, if it was eaten at all, it was first buried for days to mellow the flavor.
Well, I mean, it's similar to, any of that, shrimp, a lot of that stuff, shrimp, crab, lobster was all for people, right? That's why people in Louisiana eat, because it's abundant down there, but
Yeah,
it's like, it's what they could afford.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it's weird, it's this
The taste
weird
of
thing
change.
that like, I don't know, sweatpants, flip flops, right? It becomes this idea of like, that's just
Or
what,
jeans.
that's just what poor people can afford. And then all of a sudden, like, it becomes a trend from some, influencer
Right,
or
right.
you
Some
know,
rock star
or
with
the
sweatpants.
fashion group says, I'm gonna sell the same thing and they can sell it for thousands of dollars,
That's
and then
right.
all of a sudden,
Gucci sweatpants.
regular ones are just as expensive.
Yeah.
Go up too, just because it's tied to something. It's like,
Uh-huh.
man, now this thing that used to be $30
Right,
repair is now 100.
yeah,
Like you can't, or $10 is now 30.
yeah.
And
Right.
it's there's this, how do we try to stop that, like, over infatuating things?
Right.
As a consumer culture, I don't know if, I think it's
Yeah.
strictly a Western world thing of like, we're so influenced by the rich and powerful and what they have, like they determine what's
Well,
worth anything.
I don't know that that's just Western. Well, it wasn't clear exactly where the shop was. I know I'm going ahead to that.
Oh, I guess
The elephant. Well, the elephant, remember the elephant
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
It begins with, she's looking in the shop for something to take home, and it ends with,
Or her new husband.
her new husband, right.
Yeah.
Something quality,
Something
something.
shows that he is above
Right.
others, right?
Mhm.
And so I think there's just something universal about, we want to be a step above everyone else, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe steps above. Whatever that
Right.
takes, and if it takes using and abusing God's creation to do it, so be it.
Like conspicuous consumption.
Yeah, right, yeah. And that's, I think that's the truth too. It's like, well,
Mhm.
Do I like this? I don't know, but it's expensive, and
It
so
must be good.
I'm gonna show off that I can buy it, and
Right, I have the means and that
Right.
makes me important.
Which I think is a difference between that and like tuna. Fish is a good sustainable food because fish grow fast. Well, I don't know about, the tuna is the weird one because I don't know if they do.
yeah,
Because but that's where like sustainable comes in of like, you eat fish that grow and mature quickly
mhm,
so that they can keep reproducing.
right,
Uh, and then also have good nutritional value, right? So you don't have to eat as much
mhm.
to get, I mean, that's the other thing, it's like, we just don't eat so,
Right,
we eat so stinking much.
No.
yeah,
Oh my goodness, yeah, the
You know,
American,
I mean,
appetite
yeah, right,
compared
right.
to others.
Uh,
We noticed that, like, the medium at Wendy's is like.
Oh, yeah.
$8.
Yeah, it's a
It's like
bucket
a
now.
tankard.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And just a regular sized cup is, I forget where we were at. But that was like their medium,
mhm,
just
yeah,
this little thing.
that's right. And what, and fries, remember we used to get like, they used to have it like in paper, it was in paper, it'd be like this big, and that's a small fry. A small fry is now a big one, and
Right.
it is like a bucket for a large.
Mhm.
yeah,
Super sized.
Yeah, yeah,
it's like,
They seem to have the
do
super.
you guys
size.
watch Parks and Rec?
uh-huh,
Yes.
Yeah, there's the Sweetums. It's
Oh,
like
yes.
local candy
yes,
factory.
yes.
But like, they have a thing of like, their super large thing, it's like, it's literally like
Oh, it is like a bucket, isn't it?
it's huge, I can't remember how big it is, it's like a 5 gallon bucket, really,
Uh-huh.
of soda, and it's like for like $1.72 or something.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Well, that was the McDonald's trick forever, right? Is they would get a huge thing for $1, right? To get you in the store, so that, well, if I'm going to McDonald's anyway, I might as well get an apple pie or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Add
Well,
on to my
they-
order, they try to get you to add on to your order.
They had like, any drink is $1
Mhm.
size.
Yeah, any size.
You want an extra large, you want a small, it's $1,
Right, right.
which,
They could take a
Then-
bath in one.
well, then you think, well, I got,
Giant
us in
cup.
our, mindset is like, well, I need to get the most soda for my
So I
buck,
get
so
that
I'm
one.
gonna get a large, even though I don't finish it all, probably, or I do, and then I get diabetes, or.
And that's
you
it,
know,
I mean, I think some of the consumption stuff, right, we get more, thinking that we're getting more value as opposed to what we need or what we want, what we really want, right, we're getting more than we want because we think we might want it. Or,
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, and so consumption of all of this, plastic that ends up in the birds' bellies and, meat from bonobos and.
Which I think, I mean, this kind of is off topic, but it's why I like the minimalists, is cause it's like, they talk about like, well, how much does it cost you? And not just upfront monetarily, but like, okay, well, you have that, now you have to store it somewhere.
Yeah,
You have room in your
oh,
house.
right, that's right,
Do you have, or you're gonna have to move something to a storage unit, now you're having to pay that storage unit, now all of a sudden that item that you thought was $20 or $100 is now actually,
Right.
$750.
that's right, yeah.
Right.
Right, and.
Well, and the Costco argument, right? You say, well, I really need $5 worth of this item, right? But I'm gonna get $15 worth of this item and throw away, how much of it?
Right,
And
half
so
of
I'm
it.
still spending $8 on what I needed of $5.
Right, yeah, it's like,
The logic of it is.
Yeah.
right, it's like,
Yeah.
but it's cheaper if I buy 2 of them.
Mhm. Right,
But you
yeah.
still, but it's like, they're like, I mean, it's that same thing, right? It's like, okay, it's $5 a piece or 2 for $8, and it's like, you didn't save $2.
Uh-huh,
You actually spend $3.
$3 more, exactly right, yeah.
But that's not how,
But that's how consumption works, I mean, I think that's how.
I mean, it's shipping on stuff, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like $10 flat rate shipping. It's like, well, okay, well then I'll have to buy as much stuff as I can. cause it's free shipping after that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, but do you need that?
Right.
Now all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need that.
Well, and so I wonder too, that bluefin tuna that
Mhm.
they're butchering,
Yeah,
how much of that goes to waste?
right,
You know?
right,
It doesn't all get consumed probably.
yeah, oh,
Which is
well.
really-
Right, and I think that's the thing with a lot of that, I think that's true.
The story with the elephant, I don't know if you're ready to go to Good Friday,
Oh.
yet,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was.
but, you know, this entire, massive
The rest of the park
beast,
could.
and it's just, all they wanted was for ivory.
Mhm.
I mean, you could argue that like, okay, the hyenas now have food, but
Mhm.
I mean, animals die normally or whatever,
Right,
like there's other ways
exactly.
hyenas can eat.
Yes, yes.
Like that's
For
not the,
centuries, these
Yeah.
animals have
like you,
had a balance without anybody taking one part of it.
and, you know, if you want, I mean, it's one of those things like, you play it the other way then, right? Elephants die naturally and hyenas don't eat tusks.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you
Sure.
can, like, we can do this in a way that like, okay, well.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can find it, you can.
Right, but it's just,
Yeah.
oh, but it was a very powerful Good Friday
Yeah,
story, right?
Right,
To see the
the sacrifice.
sacrifice and the grief,
Mhm.
to see the elephants that keep coming back,
yeah, I mean, for people who
Yeah.
wanna know more, it's the story of this elephant is 40 or 50 years old. It's kind of this, it is this the matriarch of this herd of elephants. They get shot by some poachers. You know, the other elephants have to keep moving on to water sources or whatever, but they keep coming back to that spot. You know, cause it's their matriarch.
Right,
It's who they follow.
yeah, even when all the meat's gone from the bones and it's just the skull.
Yeah,
they
It's
keep
still
coming
coming
back. Yeah, it's moved by the connection to the women who wouldn't leave the cross, who would stay.
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah, like the daughter of the elephant that stood over her.
Yeah.
For days.
Which, by the way, I really appreciate. I mean, she could have gone really over the top with kind of the religious language, and it was very subtly done and very, the connection to Lent and the connection to, religious themes was not in your face. And maybe on purpose, so that it didn't turn off an audience that wasn't there, ready for that. But I just thought it was well written to
Well,
connect.
yeah, and I mean, that's also the thing of like, it's deeply religious, but you don't have to name it,
Yeah.
right? I think people who are religious can easily see the things without you just mentioning them.
Right,
Because
right,
there's people who, once they see those, it's like, oh, this is
Right.
done, like, why, I mean, I think it's similar to other, Christian media, we have to make sure that everyone sees the label,
that's right, yeah.
and it's like, no, like
Which is another connection, like you're saying, to
The message.
evangelism, right? I mean,
yeah,
does it have to look, does it have to come in these kind of traditional forms of, this is what truth looks like, as opposed to,
Well-
this is a Jesus branded version.
it's
right?
showing versus telling.
Standing.
Yeah,
It's
right,
how
that's
to
a good
learn-
way to say it,
It's how to learn in elementary school how to write well.
Uh-huh,
It's like,
yeah,
well, don't just say the person is sick, show, like,
Right.
it's describe the person, like,
that's right,
but
yeah,
then we forget that, and it's like, oh, we have to make sure that we label things as Christian, we
That's
have to
right,
make
yeah.
sure that we say that this is,
and this is deeply theological to me.
Yeah,
It
it
feels
is.
very,
it is.
very much about, God's good creation, but it doesn't talk about Jesus in every chapter, I mean, or at all, I mean, except for the introduction and conclusion, really.
Right,
And it's
right.
kind of one of those things that, if you know, but if you don't, it still draws you in.
You're not missing anything,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there still is very poignant
Yeah.
It's
message.
not blatant in your face.
Right,
connection.
right.
Right. And then the last one of my favorites,
Yeah,
the Taki,
Lucky, yeah,
which is a type of breed of horse, a wild horse. And it starts off like all the other ones, it mentions the majesty of them. I think there's Mongolia, so like Central Asia, somewhere, that's where Mongolia is. And it says like, oh, they all died out, from the wild, but the only ones left were in captivity or zoos. And eventually they, a person found out and said, hey, we can revive this and, through intelligence and diligence, we're able to, repopulate them, and then once in sanctuaries or designated areas, and then when they had enough of them, they released them out into the wild. It is that, right? I mean, it's essentially raising things from extinction. They were all but extinct from.
Right, the paragraph that kind of concludes it: golden lion tamarins and brown pelicans, bald eagles and peregrine falcons, red wolves, gray wolves, Florida panthers, California condors, Vancouver Island marmots, the neen, so that the Bontebok, the addax, American burying beetles and American alligators, yellowfin, mad toms and piping plovers. All these species and more once seemed certain to vanish from the earth, and all have returned, some astoundingly, some haltingly, because humans, many or few, hoped or allowed a wild hope to bloom. Yeah,
It's a hopeful.
it's a good Easter message. Yeah, again, when you know, when as soon as I started reading it and I knew it was on Easter Sunday, it's like, okay, where's the resurrection? Where's the good news? Finally, I need a chapter that's got some good news.
That the sentence, the first sentence of the last paragraph there, a dream seated in sadness and love quietly defies cynicism and grows by turning fear into work.
Well, and here's some of the most explicit theology, and it's still not that explicit, but she writes, dream workers lie awake with doubt, sit still when set back. They go on again, more clear-eyed, their love refined by the one undying love that animates all things. All in caps, clearly. Clearly, she knows where that love is generated from. And sees that the creator love in the work that these scientists are doing. Love takes flesh and makes all things new.
It's good. And then, what's also cool is, so there's an afterword, because but it's saying like, all these are all endangered and people are trying to rescue them. So, this book hopefully is outdated. And so it gives like all these, different foundations and specific websites you can go to kind of watch and follow these animals. So each one has a handful of websites you can go to follow it.
Yeah.
You wanna give or donate to a cause or, see, it's pretty cool.
Read more about them.
Yeah,
Oh, and it did say that if you go to the paracletepress.com/wild hope website, you can click all of those links that are in the book.
yeah.
Learn more about each one. Yeah, again, I was thinking about folks, specific people who, animal lovers, and like, this is a Christmas book. This is a good gift.
Yeah. Any other comments on the book before we wrap up?
It's interesting, it's so particularized, right? It doesn't, it doesn't say, here's the thing that we're gonna talk about. Obviously, endangered species is the theme, but it doesn't like try to make these big points across the whole thing as much as saying, I wanna make a point about this and this one. It feels like in the particular, then you see.
Yeah.
Cause there's even wondering about tonight, it's like, what are we gonna be able to talk about? An orangutan and then a mussel and then but sure enough, you see the things, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for that. Conversation was good. I believe next on the list is when Darwin comes to town. When Darwin?
Oh, no, I mean, when?
Oh,
When
are we doing it?
when is Darwin coming to town?
When is Darwin coming to town? Hey, he's coming to town.
Calendar?
That is a good question. I can't remember when it is. I'll have to look up. I
Okay,
think it's in June,
okay,
maybe May.
cause it's April now, so we read it in May and discuss it in June.
I think that's
Okay.
TBD.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the next book, which, people are wondering, it was on one of the off months last year.
Oh, that's right, we
It's
were
been
gonna
tied up and then
skip it.
And I started reading it and then I got behind it.
Darwin did not make it.
Darwin.
2023, we'll make it in 2020. Lord willing and the creek.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so, yeah, it's a good book about, urban microevolution.
Mm.
I always get micro and macro mixed up. It's the idea of like, I mean, one of the first sections it talks about is like mosquitoes in I think it's the London Underground.
Huh?
But there's so many different tunnels of the underground,
Uh,
the different portions of the tube system have, like, the mosquitoes have evolved enough that they're considered a different species. of
wow,
mosquito.
and that's like the bonobos, that was fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
The
Oh, yeah.
chimpanzees and gorillas evolved in one way and bonobos on the
Yeah.
other side of the river, on the south side of the river.
Based on the fact that they don't have
Predators.
or competing things, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so mosquitoes in.
Yeah, there's mosquitoes but yeah, it's how does the urban environment?
Yeah.
Influence
That's
its
it.
evolution?
This does say, I'm looking at the calendar now, it does say begin Purple Team book reading for this book in May. And then the 26th of June is the last Wednesday book study on it.
So we have almost 3 months. Rest of April, maybe, probably rest of June.
Yeah.
All right,
Good.
that's me.
Can I say a prayer?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. God, we're thankful for your creation. We're thankful for all of the animals, those that are thriving and those that are barely hanging on. May we, as we're called to do in your scripture, care for those that are our neighbors, that are a part of our ecology, that are part of your creation. May we find new ways, creative ways to be connected to the earth that sustains us as you sustain us. In your name we pray, amen.
Love the drawings too.